Hi, my name is Rohit, and welcome to my channel where we talk about life, love, and spirituality. Today we're going to talk about judgment. Now, not just judgment, but what does it mean to be judgmental? And to understand if you are judgmental, and if you are so, what can you do about it? We're also going to look at the effects that judgmentalism, if I can call it that, has upon our lives as a person, as an individual, and how it impacts our relationships, how it impacts our view of the world, and how it impacts almost every area of our life. If this is a topic you're interested in, hang on, I'll be with you in just a moment. Judgment is very different from being judgmental. So let me go over what the difference might be. To make a judgment is to make a sensible decision, to arrive at a well-considered conclusion. And that's not a bad thing. This can actually be quite necessary and quite useful. I mean, do I want to go to the road left or the road right? I have to make a decision. Do I want to take this job or that job? That's an important decision, right? Do I want to marry this person or love this person or not? Lots of decisions to be made in life, and we have to make some judgment calls. Then on the other hand, we have judges. We have people who pronounce judgment upon people who've done terrible things in our society and in our world. Perhaps another necessary thing as well. I'm not a great fan of it, but I will go along with it for the time being. But what does it mean to be judgmental? According to the dictionary, the definition of being judgmental is to be critical. Nitpicking would be an example of that. Fault finding would be another. When you're finding fault with yourself or others, or the world for that matter. So if that's what being judgmental is, the question then to be asked is, what effect does it have on our lives? For one thing, I noticed that being judgmental causes people to be in conflict. It causes us to not only disagree with others, but also to sometimes even look down upon them, perhaps even belittle them, perhaps ignore them, reject them. It may cause all kinds of conflict and fights. Sometimes even wars between nations have been caused by judgment. Wars between religion have been caused by judgment. Many people say the cause of the problem is religion. I personally believe the cause of the problem is judgment. The cause of most of our breakups in relationships, I would bring it down to judgment. It's really the core problem that every human being has with themselves and with others. Even when we talk about self-love, and a lot of people find it very fashionable to talk about this topic, you can't, according to me, be in a state of self-love while still judging and criticizing and belittling and name-calling yourself. Neither do I believe can you be in a good, healthy relationship when you're doing the same with another person, be that someone at work, be that your lover, partner, child, or anyone else. I also believe you can't be happy in this world if you're constantly judging and criticizing the way the world is. Now, I'm at the same time not talking about being positive as the only alternative. We're going to look at some much deeper solutions, and we're going to take a much deeper dive into this. So the first beginning, the origins, the cause of judgmentalism arises from the tendency of the mind to see things in polarities, either right or wrong, either good or bad, and to put things into these simplistic boxes. In psychology, that would be referred to as black and white thinking at its extreme. We may sometimes be able to see some positives in something, but be overly weighted towards the negative, or vice versa. So that would cause us to become judgmental towards something. Now, having said that, one doesn't have to be judgmental. One may simply notice differences in things, and that's okay. Noticing that you have certain preferences. You like chocolate ice cream over vanilla ice cream, or you like this over that. That's fine. That's a preference. But a judgment is not only do you have a preference, be it an ideological preference or a conceptual faith or whatever else based preference, but you also are critical of those who do not follow your preference. As it happens today in our political circles, we often see this happening, where you belong to one group and then you are judgmental of the other group. You're critical of them and you find fault with them and you notice all the worst things about them. But what if you were able to see both sides of a situation in a conflict, in a political arena, in all areas of your life. If you could look at both sides, that which you like and that which you don't like, how would that work for you? I found that ability to be able to see both sides or multiple sides of a situation and be able to appreciate the different angles, it can be extremely useful. And before we go into understanding how that would happen, let's understand why the mind does come up with these kind of judgmental opinions or these kind of critical opinions. According to research, it has been found that this is a defense mechanism. By making us feel right and better and superior, the ego is defending itself and trying to in some way preserve its identity. It's trying to preserve its sense of well-being and also its idea or ideas that it has created about the world and about people, like how people should behave, what are the right manners, what are the right things to be done and not to be done. And once somebody steps over from right to wrong, then it believes, our ego believes, and society often believes, and religion often believes, that we must put them in their place by telling them that they're wrong and judging and criticizing them. It's also an interesting way to avoid looking at our own faults. It really helps us when we are pointing the finger at others. We're not really looking back at ourselves. We're not looking at how we contributed to the problem. What are the problems with our way of thinking? How what we're doing or saying, and even the very act of judging people, might actually be a problem. I remember coming across this really interesting line. It was from the Bible. It said, "Judge not lest you be judged." Now, I don't follow any particular scripture, but that line did have a huge impact on me. And I realized, because I don't like to be judged. As a kid, I got lots of it. I hated it. And so I kind of like this appealed to me. And I thought, I'm going to make a decision here. And this decision is, I will not judge myself and I will not judge others. It was a tough one to do. I found that once I did that and took a stand whenever my mind went in that direction, I would just say these three magic words: cancel, cancel, cancel. And I found that gradually the mind began to calm down and this tendency to judge began to decrease. So the mind is doing this because it's how it protects itself. And once we understand that, we can find better ways to achieve the same purpose. But let's start to examine first the key question. Are you a judgmental person? And here are some of the symptoms that might help you discern. And I hope that in discerning, you're not going to label or condemn yourself, but rather you will start looking to the solutions that I'll be proposing at the end of this video. So the first of these signs of being judgmental are that you believe that everyone is out to get you. I've known lots of people like that. It can be escalated to an area of becoming almost paranoid. But it can also have lower versions of that, such as feeling a sense of social inadequacy, feeling that you're inept or not good enough, or that people are going to say things about you. Maybe even mind reading their minds and thinking, oh, these people don't like me, or everyone's out to get me, and not being able to trust folks in the world. The second quality of being judgmental is you may expect people to be consistent all the time. And this can sometimes come across as expecting people to keep their word. Now, it's a wonderful thing to keep your word, but if you're going to constantly be looking for where a person has said something but didn't do it, you might find a lot of people don't 100% keep their word. And that can cause you to be very judgmental of them and think of yourself as, I would never do that. How can you do this kind of thing? Now, I'm not saying that we should either not keep our word or be such sticklers for someone who has or hasn't kept their word. After all, every one of us stumbles and falls from time to time, despite our best intentions. So expecting people to be consistent all the time, that they will always do something, you always do this or you never do this, is another form of cognitive distortion, as it's called in psychology. The third is you struggle to see beyond a person's flaws. If you become so overly focused on a person's flaws that that's all you can see about them, you've definitely entered into a state of being judgmental. Every person has both good and bad qualities. Every single human being, I don't know, there might be some exceptions though, but for the most part, the normal human being has good and bad qualities. And it is important for us, vital for us, if we want to have healthy relationships, that we can see both sides of the person, that which is good and that which is not according to us good. Remember, what you think is not good is your opinion, might even be your trigger, might even be something that has to do with your upbringing or your religion or something else. But every person has positives and negatives, and that what is positive might be negative for someone, and what is negative might be positive for someone. So it's really very subjective and very dependent upon a certain value system. The fourth is you easily jump to conclusions. So consider that. A small thing might happen, someone is late, and you might think, oh, this person doesn't care about me. This person is inconsiderate. This person has no respect for me. This person does not value me. While there is certainly a possibility that that is true, you can't be absolutely certain that one singular event or even a couple of such events mean that they don't respect you. It could be any number of other things. This person may not be in that habit, may have developed certain bad habits, may not be well organized. It may be something to do about them and not about you. So consider that there is always another side. The fifth sign of being judgmental is that you struggle to tolerate ambiguity or uncertainty. Consider this. Are you comfortable with change? Are you comfortable with uncertainty, with not knowing what might happen? It can make a lot of people very anxious and fearful. But it has its roots in this same idea that if I cannot predict, if I cannot know what is good and what is bad, the outcomes of events, then how can I feel safe in the world? So the ego is again defending itself against the uncertainties of the world, against the ever-changing situations, to be able to defend itself by judging another person, by putting them down, or judging a situation and causing you therefore to say, you know what, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to travel. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to take that job. I'm not going to get out of the job I'm in because I don't know. Maybe the next job will be worse than the one I'm in. You're not willing to take the risk or the plunge into an area of uncertainty, even though you might be unhappy in the place where you currently are. So that again can work against you rather than for you. Next, you're intolerant of people unlike you, people who are different, people of a different race, people of a different religion, people of a different mindset, different set of habits, people who do things that you don't do, people who aren't like you. When you start becoming judgmental of these people, you're basically somehow asserting the idea that your way of thinking is the correct way of thinking, that what you do is the right thing and what others do is wrong. And that immediately puts you into that place of being judgmental. You may also find yourself being generally pessimistic about life, because all of this judgmental thinking will lead to a sense of pessimism, a sense of seeing the worst in life, in people, in yourself, the world around you. So when that happens, you're going to find yourself developing a pessimistic, a globalized sense of negativity about the world you live in. This globalized pessimism can become the cause of tremendous unhappiness and even depression. The next quality is you tend to believe that people are either good or bad. You see things as black or white, polarized. Situations are either good or bad. You are either good or bad. And you struggle to appreciate the beauty in others or in the situations that come up to you, especially the ones that are a little difficult or challenging. Now, the cause of that may actually be something very interesting, a low sense of self-worth. One of the strategies the ego develops when you have a low sense of self-worth is it tries to make everything else look bad. It projects its own feelings onto the world and onto people. The criticism you have for yourself is often reflected in your thoughts about others, the judgment you have about yourself. This feeling of low self-worth is also what causes you to feel anxious around other people. You become suspicious and untrusting. And all of it stems from having a strong inner critic that judges you. I strongly believe that the way you treat yourself, the way you think about yourself, determines the way you see the world and see others. To me, one of the most fundamental changes that I made in my life was to change the way I treated myself. That instead of judging and criticizing myself, I actually said to myself that under no circumstances was my mind allowed to judge me, ever. I am the boss of my mind. I am in charge of this mind, and it has no business under any circumstance judging, criticizing, or putting me down. So it really gave me a lot of freedom, and I would want the same for you. So let's go over some of the solutions. The first that I mentioned was to stop judging yourself under any circumstances. Remember that line, judge not lest you be judged, because just as much as you don't like to be judged, neither do others. Right? And judging, in fact, doesn't help anyone. It's often a cover-up for not wanting to look at your own flaws. So rule number 1, stop judging yourself, and that will change the way you see the world. The second is to look at both sides of a situation, both positive and negative. Example, consider this. People who are mean, cruel, shallow, etc. usually are coming from a place of pain and fear. What if you could look at that pain and fear and empathize with them? What if instead of judging them, you were to feel compassion and be able to reach out to them? What if you were to become more empathetic? I see that this tendency to judge can be turned into a deep form of empathy and compassion, and can help us enrich our lives. That instead of being critical of others, instead of cutting others off, instead of seeing the world as us versus them, instead of creating factions and dividing people one from the other, if we want to really open our hearts up to ourselves, to loving ourselves, and to loving others, if we stop judgment, we will begin to move to that level of an open heart where we can begin to love the world, to love ourselves, to love our life, and to love the people who come into it. My suggestion to you, take it or leave it, is drop the judgment. Whenever your mind goes there, say cancel, cancel, cancel. And just see what a difference it makes in your life to drop judgment once and for all. You're going to find yourself a happier, more peaceful, more calm, more loving, more kind, more compassionate, and more wonderful person. That is what I would wish for you. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.